In the quiet village of Umuoma, where the sun painted golden streaks on the rooftops, there was a girl named Amarachi, who lived with her frail grandmother and her two younger siblings, Chika and Uju. Life had never been easy for them. Their parents had died in a car accident when they were very young, leaving Amarachi to shoulder the weight of the family's survival. Since the tender age of 10, she had become the family's pillar. Every morning before daybreak, Amarachi would wake up, fetch water from the stream, sweep the compound, help her grandmother cook, and then walk miles to the village market. There, she sold fruits and took on odd jobs just to put food on the table and ensure her siblings could attend school. Despite her struggles, she held on to the belief that one day their story would change. As she grew into a beautiful young woman, Amarachi became known throughout the village for her virtues, kindness, and resilience. Everyone admired and respected her. One day, while selling at the market, Amarachi noticed an elderly man drop a small leather wallet. Picking it up, she was stunned. It was filled with money, more than she had ever seen in her life. For a brief moment, she thought about how much that money could change her family's life. New clothes for Chika, school fees for Uju, and more food for their home. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't hers to keep. She ran after the man, calling out, "Sir! Sir! You dropped this!" The old man turned around in surprise. Seeing his lost pouch, he gasped, "My child, do you know what you have done? This money was for my sick wife's medicine. If I had lost it, she would have suffered greatly. You are a rare child. Many would have kept this, but you chose honesty. Thank you, my child." A life-changing opportunity. One evening, just as the sun melted into the horizon, a distant relative, Auntie Ngozi's daughter, arrived from the city. With her fine clothes and sweet perfume, she looked like someone untouched by hardship. She spoke with Amarachi and her grandmother and made an unexpected offer. "Come with me to the city. You can start your bachelor's degree, all will be funded by me. My mother needs help managing her store, and you will earn good money. This will help you and your siblings." As she had just gotten married and would be leaving for the States soon, it felt like a dream, an escape from poverty. Her grandmother hesitated, but seeing no other option and wanting Amarachi to further her studies, she gave her blessing. A new life in the city. Lagos was breathtaking. The city's skyline glistened under the golden hues of the setting sun, reflecting off the Atlantic Ocean. The bustling streets, the towering skyscrapers, and the vibrant energy were overwhelming for Amarachi. When they arrived, Auntie Ngozi welcomed her warmly. After settling in, she checked on her grandmother and siblings, assuring them she was safe. It was time and Auntie Ngozi's daughter left for the States. Amarachi adapted quickly to her new responsibilities, managing the store while preparing for her university entrance exams. She was disciplined and hardworking, impressing both her aunt and customers. Her warm nature made people adore her, and in no time, customers began tipping her. Her dedication paid off. She gained admission to the University of Lagos to study business administration. Balancing school, work, and home was challenging, but she handled it all with determination. After a year plus, seeing her resilience, Auntie Ngozi increased her salary from 85,000 naira to 150,000 naira monthly. Every month, Amarachi sent a large portion of her earnings to her grandmother, ensuring her siblings' education and welfare. Back in the village, Chika and Uju had already taken up the responsibilities of Amarachi. Their elder sister Chika would go to the market after school to sell fruits, while Uju would fetch water, assist Grandma in kitchen as well as doing all the house chores. She decided not to spoil them too much, so as to learn the values of life as she did, even while providing for them. A night of horror. One evening, after school, Amarachi stopped by the store before heading home. After closing up, she hailed a cab. Just as she got in and closed the door, a man from behind covered her nose with a cloth. Everything went dark. Hours passed. Auntie Ngozi grew worried when Amarachi didn't return home. She rushed to the police station, but they asked her to come back the next day. The next morning, just as she was about to leave for the station, Amarachi walked in. Auntie Ngozi, panicking and furious, shouted, "Where have you been? Do you know how worried I was?" Amarachi walked past her emotionlessly and sat on the couch. Her aunt's anger intensified. "Why aren't you answering me?" At that moment, Amarachi broke down, sobbing uncontrollably as she narrated her ordeal. Auntie Ngozi's heart shattered. She pulled Amarachi into an embrace, consoling her as she wept. For 2 weeks, Amarachi couldn't go to school or the store. Her friend Kemi called, reminding her of their upcoming exams, pushing her to gather herself and move forward. Slowly, she resumed her daily routine, but something inside her had changed. One evening at the store, a handsome man walked in, picked a few items, and approached the counter. Amarachi, still moody, barely acknowledged him. After a week of frequent visits, he finally got her to talk. "My name is Obinna," he introduced himself, smiling. She hesitated before replying, "Amarachi." They started talking, and eventually they became friends. Auntie Ngozi liked him. He later revealed that he was the CEO of Okel Corporation, an only child, and an orphan. His parents had died in a plane crash when he was little. This common pain of losing parents deepened their bond. As time passed, Amarachi fell ill. A medical checkup revealed she was pregnant. She broke down in tears as the traumatic memory flooded back. "Auntie, what do I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You keep the baby, my dear. You're not alone. We'll figure this out together," Auntie Ngozi reassured her. As weeks passed, rumors spread that Obinna was responsible for her pregnancy. He noticed her withdrawal and confronted her. "Is it because of what people are saying?" he asked. She nodded. "Is the father available?" he continued. "No," she whispered. "Then be my girlfriend," he said. Amarachi was stunned. Why would he want to date a pregnant woman carrying another man's child? "I'll give you time to think about it," he said softly. Despite many women seeking Obinna's attention, he had eyes only for Amarachi. One evening, Obinna came down to the store and asked Amarachi out, but she was hesitant. Sensing her reluctance, Auntie Ngozi pulled her aside and advised her to go, reassuring her that Obinna was a good man and that such opportunities were rare, especially for a pregnant woman. After some thought, Amarachi agreed. Obinna promised to pick her up from the house at 7 p.m. and have her back by 10 p.m. Auntie Ngozi approved, feeling confident that it was the right decision. When they got home, Amarachi had already prepared for the dinner, but her auntie was not pleased with her outfit. "What are you wearing?" Auntie Ngozi asked, shaking her head. "No, take it off," she insisted, handing Amarachi one of her daughter's elegant dinner dresses. Amarachi reluctantly changed, and when she stepped out, her aunt's face lit up with excitement. "Now that's more like it," she exclaimed. "But take off that scarf, my dear. It's a dinner, not a casual outing, and wear your hair down. It will look much better." A few minutes later, Obinna's driver arrived to pick her up, as Obinna was still held up in a meeting. When she arrived at the restaurant and walked towards the table reserved for them, Obinna looked up and was stunned. Amarachi looked breathtakingly beautiful, almost unrecognizable from the simple girl he had grown fond of at the store. He couldn't stop staring. "You are so beautiful," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Amarachi smiled shyly. "Thank you," she replied. The evening was wonderful. They talked for hours, sharing stories and learning more about each other. For the first time in a long while, Amarachi felt truly happy, and Obinna knew, without a doubt, that he wanted to be a part of her life. In between dropping her off at school and dropping her for lectures, Obinna decided he was ready, while Amarachi told Kemi about Obinna, and she was so happy for her. After a few dates, and 6 months had gone by, over one dinner, Obinna proposed to Amarachi, and she said yes. And they traveled to the village to meet his uncle, Mr. Okoro, who turned out to be the same elderly man Amarachi had helped with his wallet years ago. "Faith is mysterious," he said. Overwhelmed with joy, the family gave their blessings. They all went with Auntie Ngozi to Amarachi's grandmother's house, where Obinna formally expressed his intention to marry her. With the family's blessing, preparations began, and within a week, a grand wedding was held. Though it was a joyous occasion, rumors circulated, especially among Obinna's colleagues, questioning his decision to marry a pregnant woman they barely knew. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner during the reception, Mike, Obinna's friend, was seen in a hushed conversation with an unknown man. After the wedding, Amarachi and Obinna returned to Lagos, settling into their new life together. They cherished their time as a couple, eagerly anticipating the arrival of their baby. A few weeks later, as Amarachi ascended the stairs to her room, a sudden gush signaled the onset of labor. Obinna, filled with a mix of excitement and concern, quickly escorted her to the hospital. There, amidst moments of anticipation and support, Amarachi gave birth to healthy twins. Returning home, their home blossomed with joy as they embraced the challenges and delights of parenthood. Obinna, balancing his professional responsibilities, dedicated quality time to assist with the babies, embodying the role of a loving and involved father. Amarachi watched her husband with a heart full of gratitude. Together, they navigated the sleepless nights and the uncharted territories of parenthood. Their bond strengthening with each shared smile filled their home with unparalleled happiness. Auntie Ngozi and Obinna's aunt arrived for Omugwo, the traditional postpartum care, ensuring Amarachi and the babies were well cared for. As Amarachi's grandmother was too old to come, as she regained her strength, Amarachi, determined not to fall behind in her studies, returned to school and began preparing for her next exams, balancing her new life as a mother, student, and wife. Life seemed perfect until Obinna received an anonymous blackmail message. "I know what happened that night. Pay up, or Amarachi will know everything." Mike called him shortly and asked him to meet him at his place concerning the message he just received. "Did you send that message?" Obinna asked. Mike didn't reply and the call ended. Obinna stormed into Mike's place, his fists clenched, barely containing his anger. "What do you want, Mike?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with tension. Mike scoffed before shouting, "You married that same girl? Why?" Obinna narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Mike smirked, feigning innocence, but his voice was filled with rage. "Stop pretending to be the good guy. I've been receiving threats from this number, telling me to ask my friend, you, to pay up, or they'll ruin you." He pulled some photographs and slammed it onto the table. Obinna's heart stopped. It was a picture from that fateful night. The night he had been drugged and had woken up in bed beside an unconscious, disoriented woman. Obinna had been groggy himself, his head spinning, his body heavy. He didn't recognize the room. Panic surged through him as he quickly put on his clothes, carefully keys, and left, seated in his car still trying to make sense of what had happened. Outside, he saw her, the woman, stumbling out of the compound. Something inside him told him to follow her. He trailed her at a distance, watching as she made her way home. After that day, he didn't see her again for a week. Suspicious and unable to shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong, he hired a private investigator to track her movements. Every day, the investigator checked her place, waiting. Then finally she appeared, on her way to school. Obinna followed her from school to her auntie's store, carefully piecing the puzzle together. He kept getting updates from his investigator, watching and waiting. Then, after a month, he decided it was time to confront her face to face. The memory fades as he is called back to reality by Mike's voice. The blackmailer demanded 20 million naira. The next day, Obinna met them at the designated location, placing stacks of cash on the table. He counted every note meticulously before sliding the last bundle toward Mike. Without a word, he turned and walked away. But greed is never satisfied. Seeing how easily Obinna had produced the money, Mike and his accomplice decided they hadn't asked for enough. It wasn't long before Obinna's brief moment of peace and happiness with his new family was shattered by another phone call. Once again, he met them at an undisclosed location. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Obinna demanded, his patience wearing thin. The man chuckled darkly. "Because it's fun watching you squirm. But don't worry, I'm not greedy. 100 million naira should be enough to keep me silent." Obinna clenched his fists. He knew he had two choices: pay the blackmailer again and keep his secret hidden, or expose the truth and risk everything. Mike, standing beside the blackmailer, urged, "Just pay them, Obinna. It's better than ruining your home." But Obinna had made his decision. He wasn't going to be manipulated any longer. Instead of giving in, he turned to his trusted friend, the private investigator, David. "I need to know who set me up that night," Obinna said firmly. David got to work, combing through security footage from the club that night. He analyzed every face, tracked the movements of people coming and going, and followed every lead. Then, the truth unraveled. The unknown man Mike had spoken to at the wedding, he was the one who orchestrated the setup. Armed with this evidence, Obinna confronted Mike. "So you were pulling the strings all along," Obinna said coldly, tossing the incriminating photos onto the table. "Why?" Mike's face paled, but he forced a smirk. "Does it matter? You still need to keep your wife from finding out." Obinna leaned in, his voice dangerously low. "You should be worried about yourself." Mike's smug expression faltered. Obinna stepped back, and in that moment, the doors burst open. Mike's confidence shattered as officers stormed in. The game was over. That evening, when Obinna returned home, gently he asked, "Where are the kids?" "They are upstairs," she replied. Then he continued, "Amarachi, there's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice breaking. Kneeling down and crying bitterly, he confessed everything. Amarachi stood in silence, confused, trying to digest what she heard. Removing her hand from his grip, she walked upstairs to her room and locked herself inside with her babies and cried all through the night. The next morning, Obinna left for work in the attempt to give her space to process it all. Later that evening, as he walked in, Amarachi stood up to leave the sitting room, but he grabbed her hand and knelt down. Tears streaming down his face, he begged for her forgiveness. After a moment of silence, Amarachi spoke. "I trust you didn't mean for any of it to happen," she said softly. "I forgive you." Relief washed over him. I love you, Amarachi, he whispered. She hugged him. I love you too, Obinna. The good thing from this is that you are their biological father. She falsed a joke while still crying. Their past no longer held them hostage. Together, they built a new future, proving that love, forgiveness, and resilience conquer all. Honesty, integrity, resilience, hard work, sacrificial love, and responsibility on Amaraki's part. Above all, the power of forgiveness which lead to redemption and overcoming their painful past, as well as standing against blackmail. Family and community support on the part of Auntie Ngozi. If we have more of her, there will be less abortions in our society. Fate and destiny, good deeds always return. Looking at the coincidences with Obinna's uncle and Amarachi. And lastly, Justice met up with Mike. Thanks for watching this story. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Follow for more exciting stories, and see you in our next video.